His name was Tim.
To try and comprehend the puzzling changes that had occurred since her transplant, Claire sought help from psychologist Robert Bosnack. Together, they located her donor's family. Claire's dream had been correct. Her donor's name was Tim L. Another fact his family revealed took Claire by complete surprise.
The first thing that I had to get when I was able to drive by myself, I found myself going to a Kentucky Fried Chicken place and getting chicken nuggets, something I don't do and something I don't eat. When I was sitting with the donor family 2 years later, they were saying, and his favorite food was chicken nuggets. And at the moment of death, he had just bought them and they had to take him out of his motorcycle jacket. So there was that transference of memory.
At that moment, you could see Claire first she turned white, and then she turned bright red, and you could see that memory just came over her like a ton of bricks. And the only thing I can say is it still gives me goosebumps.
The family took me to the cemetery where he was buried. And what was so incredible, written on his tombstone was, "Together forever." And those were the last words in the dream that I had when I first envisioned him, when he came to me and I knew his name.
When I first learned about Claire Sylvia and her dramatic receiving of information that was so identical to the donor, she reminded me of a phrase that the very famous professor of psychology, William James from Harvard, said, that is, in order to disprove the law that all crows are black, we need only find one white crow. And what's interesting is we're starting to get a collection of crows. When you start seeing so many different colored birds, if you would, you realize that the universe is far more interesting and wondrous place than we've previously recognized.
When one of America's leading transplant surgeons invited an energy healer into the operating room, he too began wondering if human organs possess memories, even when they're not in a body. If organ recipients can inherit their donors' memories, it challenges a major medical assumption that transplanting an organ is no different to replacing a worn-out part in a car. For organ recipients, the experience is not so simple.
They opened me up, took out my vital organs. Where was I when that happened? There was an empty space in there. Was I dead? They put this other person whom I don't know, a stranger's heart and lungs within me, which are causing me to breathe and have a heartbeat and continue my life. This is wicked crazy. It was Frankensteinian.
Some surgeons are willing to acknowledge that transplanting an organ is more than just a mechanical procedure.
Many people think the heart's just a pump. It's easy to replace. It's got a very simple mechanism of action. But I think the fact that it plays such a huge role in our literature, in fact dominates our poetry, reflects the fact that the average person appreciates a much more subtle influence that the heart has.
Renowned cardiac transplant surgeon Dr. Mehmet Oz was recently named one of the 40 brightest thinkers in America.
Echo. Just double check the echo. Make sure they dig.
He's convinced the human body isn't merely a machine controlled by a computer-like brain.
We live in a time when we think the brain dominates all sensation, all thought. And if there is any validity to the concept of cells retaining memory, we may find it in the heart. Why? Because the heart's a remarkable window into the soul.
Realizing it takes more than a new organ to heal a transplant patient, Mehmet Oz made a bold decision. He invited energy healer Julie Motz into the operating theater. Before long, extraordinary things began to occur.
Julie would frequently ask me very detailed questions about donor hearts. She would walk over to the heart before I got to it, because I was busy getting out the old heart from the recipient. And she would examine it with her hands, not touching it, but sensing it, and then ask me probing questions about them.
Well, the very first time it happened, I was afraid to go and put my hands over the chest because I thought it would look too funny to have my hands waving over the ice chest. But my second surgery, I realized that nobody was watching anyway. So I walked over to the chest and I put my hands, and I was just about to tell the heart, you know, that it was coming into this wonderful new body. And an image came to me of two women driving down a road at night in a car and fighting. And I had no idea what this was about, and I asked the surgeon, where did we get the heart? And he said there was a car accident. The mother was driving and the daughter was killed. When they put the heart in the body, the heart didn't start to beat. They put paddles on it, they put chemicals into it. This is every surgeon's nightmare. And so the message that I got was the heart was afraid that if it got angry, if it began to beat aggressively, it would get killed, because that was the message the body had given it. So I leaned over and I whispered in her ear, I said, you have got to get angry, and you have got to give the new heart permission to get angry. And then I did something I don't usually do because it looks a little weird. I actually put my hand over the surgical drape and sent energy directly into the heart. And the heart came back and started to beat. And the perfusionist told me later he'd never seen a heart come back so far or so fast.
The energies Julie Mott senses are still not recognized by most transplant surgeons, but she sees their effect quite clearly.
You always see it in the eyes. You know, you have the feeling there's somebody new looking out at you. There's this brightness, this new energy coming through the eyes, and that's the first place that I see the evidence of the transplant of the organ in the body.
I think that Julie had a very profound effect on many of the patients with whom she worked. She's a wonderful person who for them was a healing angel, and for that I'll always give her credit. I don't know what mechanisms were at play there, and that's the challenge we have.